Now we'll come to the management of eclampsia. If a woman has come into emergency and she is throwing fit, what will you do? See, your plan of action is going to not just revolve on controlling that particular fit, but in managing the patient overall. First of all, you need to have this perspective absolutely clear in your mind that you are not just managing the fit, you're managing the entire patient. So your horizon has to be broadened, and I'll take you step by step through it all, how you examine, how you actually manage this patient. That's why I've written it on the board. Your management is going to be first and foremost, first things first, control the convulsion. Second, the causative agent of the convulsion. Control the blood pressure, and more so the causative agent of this all, that is delivery of the fetus. In fact, it is said that the only way you can treat preeclampsia is by delivering the baby. There is no placenta, no baby, no blood pressure, and no blood pressure complications. So, first of all, when you're talking about controlling the convulsion, first and foremost, there is no way you can control the convulsion. So you are not going to do any heroic measures to stop the convulsion from happening. The convulsion will take place, you will not stop the seizure, but what you will do to help the patient will be as follows. A, B, C. Airway, breathing and circulation. You have to maintain these three things very, very earnestly. Max you can do to help the patient is to stop her from falling down. So you can just erect the side rails or give a support to the patient if at all there is no side rail, because like it happens in many of the government hospitals. So you just have to give support to the patient. Number one, you have to save her from biting the tongue if at all it is possible. Don't go too deep, otherwise you will elicit the gag reflex and that might lead to aspiration, which you're actually trying to save anyways. You have to maintain the airway in it if at all the tongue is falling back, like I just mentioned to you. If at all she's having problem in breathing, if you have to immediately attach a pulse ox to her to see the oxygen saturation. If you think that the airway is not patent, you have to secure the airway. No matter how you do it, you call for help, you do whatever you can, but you have to maintain the airway. Breathing, of course, and then you have to have a patent intra-access to see whether your patient can be given the important vital drugs which are most important at this crucial hour. So you have to go for that as well. If you don't fidget at that particular time. Most important, when you are having a patient throwing an eclamptic fit, you have to order one very important thing, and that is Mexal. There is no way that I'm going to close this chapter unless and until I talk about Mexal and Mexal in detail. What will you do about controlling the blood pressure? Now, a word of wisdom on that. Your idea of controlling the blood pressure is not to bring a blood pressure from 180, 120 back to 120. That is not possible. That's overzealous, and sometimes even that might lead to catastrophe, complications. Abrupt shock can happen anytime. So you have to, target BP will be to lower it in somewhere in between 160, 150 and 90 to 80, you can say. The diastole. So you have to bring down the blood pressure. That is possible either with intravenous labetalol, or there is a possibility, if at all the patient after the fit of course can swallow, you can give oral labetalol also. It all depends upon the kind of blood pressure there is. If it's very high, I will suggest intravenous labetalol. And now comes the dose. So 1 ampule of labetalol intravenous that you will give, you will have the dose titration goes like this. It goes from 20 milligram IV stat, wait for 10 minutes, then increase it to 40. Wait for 10 minutes, increase it to 60. Wait for 10 minutes, increase to 80. That's how it goes. And maximum you can give 300, but you never reach that limit. Somewhere before that is already the blood pressure kind of comes down to normal, and immediately so much you should not aim as well. Like I said before, you have to be very gentle in bringing down the blood pressure. It should not be sudden, because that also leads to other problems. Anyways, so when this patient is there who is throwing the fit, or you've tried to secure the airway, you've tried to manage the patient, you've given her now the loading dose of Mexal. What is the mechanism of action of Mexalf? What does it do? Whether it passes the blood-brain barrier? This is all given in your books, and I'm not going into the details of that because it's not very practical and very, academically oriented. Examiners might ask you these kind of questions, but usually the examiners that come in DNB, and specifically these are Viva questions, those people are more interested in finding out whether you know the gist of it, whether you'll be able to manage a patient which just comes into your casualty, because you are going to be sitting as a casualty medical officers henceforth when you'll be posted as SRs. So they want to know whether you'll be able to manage the patient. For that, you don't need to know the pharmacokinetics and pharmacodynamics. You should be just able to at least tell the loading dose, and you should know the regimes. Now, so there are two regimes which are there, which we talk about and which are there in the books as well. One is the IV regime, one is the IM regime. Now the Pritchard regime that you talk about is actually the intramuscular regime. Don't get confused because the loading dose is IV in that, I know that, but it is basically an intramuscular regime. So when you talk about Pritchard regime, what is the loading dose of Mexalf? The loading dose of Mexalf is actually 4 grams diluted and given IV slow over 15 to 20 minutes. Now they have specified that you use a 20% solution, 20 ml of that, and then give it slow IV. But usually in the markets, 20% solution is not that easily available. Now you don't have to go behind this 20% and 50% much, because this is going to be the second question of your examiner. See, this is what I keep doing in my classes. I keep discussing the tips and tricks and the Viva Voce questions. So please watch my lectures very keenly, very thoroughly, because so many questions of your Viva can come from my lectures alone. Anyways, going further, the idea behind this 20% and 50% solution, and why we talk about giving 20% in intravenous and 50% in intramuscular, is very simple and clean. 20% solution is more diluted, 50% solution is not that much diluted. We don't want to take a risk of giving intravenous that particular solution which is slightly concentrated. So there is no problem if at all you don't have this 20% solution in the labor room. It can happen in so many places in so many ways. Even the best of the institutes, sometimes they do not have the availability. The stock sometimes finishes of 20%. What will you do in that case? The idea is simple. You will have to dilute it a little more. So an ampule which is of 50% Mexalf is actually 2 ml में 1 gram है. This is what it is actually. So if you have a 2 ml ampule of Mexalf and it is written it is 50%, so that means 2 ml of this ampule contains 1 gram of Mexalf. So if you have to give 4 grams of Mexalf, you use 4 such ampules. Yes or no? Now 4 into 2 ml makes it 8 ml. If you have to dilute it to that extent, 20 ml, you will have to mix normal saline around 12 ml. You want to dilute it even more, you can add this. If you have any doubt, you can add this 4 grams, that means 4 of these ampules in 100 ml of NS, and go slow over 15 to 20 minutes. Nothing will happen, and your dose is also gone in the adequate amount of time, and that too absolutely diluted. You don't have to search for 20% ampule at all. Next comes your intramuscular regime. According to Pritchard, you've given the loading dose, but loading dose is going on, and you have loading dose आपने लगा दिया. You're giving slow infusion of that particular dose which I just spoken about. Now you take 5 such ampules. Why am I talking about 5 such ampules? Because you have again 50%. 50% means 2 ml में you just have 1 gram, so you have to give 5 grams now. So you'll take 5 ampules and give in intramuscular in one buttock, and again those 5 ampules in the other buttock. That means you're giving now 10 grams. This is the loading dose. This loading dose is there for a patient who has thrown an eclamptic fit. Preventive dose is slightly different, and I'll talk about when I'll talk about those classes in which I'll be talking about severe preeclampsia. This is not severe preeclampsia, this is frank eclampsia. So anyways, so this was the loading dose. The maintenance dose will be 4 hourly. You will give this 5 gram in alternate buttocks using deep intramuscular syringes. Mind you that deep intramuscular syringes are not the same as you see in your day-to-day activity. They are different. You have to ask them for deep intramuscular injections. And a tip which was given in one of the books which I just read across was, if you give 2 ml of lidocaine, that will ease out the discomfort which the patient gets during these intramuscular injections. Now, intramuscular injections are very safe as compared to intravenous injections. In those setups where the monitoring is not very good, the staff is not very much trained, you should always go for intramuscular route rather than going for intravenous route. But where you have high profile patients, where you have I should not be actually saying high profile, but yeah, if you are in such a setup where the monitoring is good, the trained and skilled staff is there is an overlooker always available, I would want to suggest for the intravenous regime. Why? For the simple reason that the intramuscular injections are very painful. They leave behind a very hard, stone hard, induration around that place, and they are actually very irritative to the patient. So if at all it's possible, you can go for intravenous regime, which is slightly more dangerous, because if somebody increases the drop rate by chance, then you can have a very, very catastrophic event waiting for you. So if that thing can be definitely looked forward to, and there is no chance that this is going to happen, then you have a good instructive, a good over is given between the staff, and all the staff are skilled and they've seen overall these kind of things happening. So there is no harm in going through an intravenous regime. Since I've spoken about intramuscular regime, now I'll speak about the intravenous regime as well. So for intravenous regime, you have 6 grams of loading dose. Now this 6 gram, according to RCOG, it's a too high a dose. RCOG recommends 4 gram IV loading dose, like I just mentioned. Again, diluted in the same way. If you dilute it in 100 ml NS, it's all the more safe, no problem in giving that. But they say the maintenance dose should be 2 grams per hour. RCOG says it should be at least 1 gram per hour maintenance dose, and that will be sufficient. Now you will have to calculate according to the drip rate how much will be 1 gram in 1 hour. Why am I specifying on this is because if you have added 5 gram of Mexsulf in 100 ml NS, then what will be the dilution? You know that 15 drops from a normal drip set is equal to 1 ml. So you have to set the drop rate accordingly. If you want to be more sure about this, you can always titrate the dosage according to the drip rate, and you have to give 1 gram per hour maintenance dose according to the RCOG, but according to the regime, if you go by the books, you will have to give 2 gram per hour maintenance dose. That's how the IV goes. And yes, most important thing when you're talking about Mexsulf and giving the next dose is that you have to continuously manage these 3 things. You have to continuously monitor these 3 things. Deep tendon reflexes should be there. Respiratory rate should be monitored. It should be more than 14 per minute. And the urine output should be at least 30 ml per hour. Only then are you sure that there is no Mexsulf toxicity. Else you can send the serum magnesium levels for the lab, or you should altogether stop or decrease or reevaluate the condition of the patient and the fact that you are giving Mexsulf. Now, I think we've gone through most of the things about Mexsulf, and the remaining things are basically its pharmacokinetics and pharmacodynamics. I've also spoken about the IV use of lubetalol in giving. Hydralazine is also one more drug which can be given IV, but it's not that easily available, and usually you give IV lubetalol in more frequently as compared to hydralazine. Plus hydralazine is very expensive as compared to lubetalol, so that will be the second thing. Like I spoke about control of convulsions, then there will be a control of blood pressure as well. IV route, I've spoken the maximum dose that can be given. I've spoken about the starting dose that can be given. Otherwise, lubetalol is pretty a safe drug. Not much thing to be worried about. But the most important thing about eclamptic fit is about to deliver the fetus. Now, what they say in books is very different to what happens the practical world. They always say that go in for a vaginal delivery until and unless an obstetric cause is there for a cesarean delivery. But in experience of all senior gynecologists, everybody is going to tell you that it's always and always fine for the patient and for the baby to have a C-section for the delivery. But you will say, according to your books and guidelines, that there is a good chance of inducing the patient. You can induce the patient for a normal delivery. Watch out for all these things. In the meanwhile, you can give if the gestational age is more or less than the date of anticipated date of delivery, you can go in for a steroid cover. You can buy time and you can induce the patient for a normal delivery until and unless other obstetric conditions are paramount. So that will be the last thing to discuss in eclampsia, and with this I finish the eclampsia topic, and I'll see you around for my next topic, that will be health and DIC, another very important topics. And if you need to talk about these topics in detail, let me know, and I hope my notes do justice to these topics, so you can always inbox me for their requirement.